Good day, everyone.
I was born and raised in Detroit. Growing up there, I saw people like me running things.
This is a courtroom, not a circus, so we're gonna calm down.
I'm sorry.
What I found there was a passion that I didn't know existed.
This is the bottom line.
I'm excited to free fall into the limitless possibilities with we the people. So many are fearful of the law. They think it's something that works against them.
I think you need to begin to accept responsibility for your mistakes.
We are the people.
Mitchell Larson claims his son broke his arm while exploring an old structure on his neighbor's property and says the defendant owes for his medical bills.
All rise.
Larry Whittaker says the plaintiff's son was trespassing, so he's not responsible.
Court is now in session. The Honorable Judge Lauren Lake presiding.
You may be seated.
Hello, Your Honor.
Hello. Good day, everyone.
Good day.
This is the case of Larson versus Whittaker. Mr. Larson, you are suing Mr. Whittaker for $1,000. You say the defendant's unsafe property caused an injury to your son. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And the defendant, you say there were no trespassing signs up everywhere.
Right.
All right, let's start with you, Mr. Larson. Tell me about this property. Where were you? What kind of property is it?
Okay, I'm an insurance broker outside of Denver, and we had moved myself to a larger property that's outside the city. I'd lived in the city for most of my life, and so I moved essentially to a neighborhood with one side neighborhood homes, and the other side just essentially woods. So a perfect place for a 12-year-old to play. My son Nathan is with me every other weekend. I'm divorced.
What gets you to the point where now you're suing Mr. Whittaker? Is this your neighbor?
He's not necessarily my neighbor. He's the person that owns the property that abuts my property. It's actually a bunch of woods. It looks like something you see, just essentially a mini forest.
But
there.
he doesn't live there?
He does not live there.
Okay, so Mr. Whittaker, you don't live on this property, you just own it.
Right.
Go ahead, Mr. Larson. How do we get to the point where your son is injured?
Okay, as you know, he's a 12-year-old kid, loves to run around. We play football in the back quite a bit, and he likes to explore. Essentially, he went out into the yard that Mr. Larson...
Was your property fenced in?
Sorry?
Was your property fenced in?
No, it was not.
So no fence?
No fence.
How could you tell where your property ended and then the next property began?
Exactly, and that was my point too, is it's hard to tell a 12-year-old, this is where our property stops and you can't go into that property.
Did you tell your 12-year-old that?
I did,
All
Your
right,
Honor.
and this is where our property ends, don't go over here.
That is correct.
All right, so you did that. So Mr. Whittaker, do you live on that property or it's just property you own?
It's property I own, but I lived on it for many years.
You did?
Yeah, I built a structure there for myself to live on.
Okay, but you don't frequent that property every day, or are you over there doing whatever?
I went over there fairly often.
Did you meet Mr. Larson when he moved in? Did you guys do a neighborly thing, or just say, hey, you're new to this area, this is my property, it's adjacent to yours?
Yeah, I saw him. I've seen him a few times over that since he moved in.
Did you see him with his son?
Yes.
You did see the son?
Yeah.
Okay, so back to you, Mr. Larson. How long had you lived here before there was this accident that hurt, where your son got hurt?
Well, been there essentially a year, and my son absolutely loves the property. And like I said, we play football in the back, we throw the baseball around quite a bit, and he loves to explore. And so essentially he found this structure that was on Mr. Whittaker's property and was exploring through it. And again, it's an old structure.
So you're saying your son was out by himself, just having a good time?
Correct.
And at some point, he does wander onto Mr. Whittaker's property?
That is correct.
Do you see him wandering onto Mr. Whittaker's
well,
property?
I see him wandering around, certainly. Again, I'm trying not to police him because he's almost a teenager, and so I'd much rather have him outside exploring than inside playing video games on his phone.
Don't we all? Don't we all? However, we want them to explore safely.
Correct.
So were you watching your son playing in the yard, exploring around. Did you see him when he crossed over into Mr. Whittaker's property?
Not specifically crossing over, but I did see him at different points of different parts of the property in question.
You saw him on Mr. Whittaker's property?
That's correct.
And at the point that he was on Mr. Whittaker's property, did you yell to him? Did you text him? Did you say, hey, that's where I told you don't go. Come on back over on this side?
Well, from what I saw, he was only there for momentarily, so it actually sort of breezed in and breezed out.
So when you saw him, he went onto the property, but then he came back onto your property?
That's correct.
Coming up.
You said that clearly, that the child was trespassing. Have you ever heard of an attractive nuisance and what that is?
It's a fairly new term to me, but I know kids are attracted to
It
things.
won't be when this case is over, because you're going to understand what that means.
If you'll be in the Los Angeles area and want to bring your case to court, call 1-888-552-6878. You're watching Emmy-nominated We the People with Judge Lauren Lake. We're back with the case of Mitchell Larson, who blames Larry Whittaker for his son's broken arm.
Take me to the point where your son gets hurt. What happened that day?
Okay, well, same thing. I had my son for that weekend. That was my custody weekend. And we were playing. Essentially, we had spent most of the afternoon outside playing football. And he decided he wanted to stay outside. I went inside, took a shower, and just sort of gotten ready for making dinner. And he had gone out, apparently, onto Mr. Whittaker's property.
Now, on that day, did you see him go on to Mr. Whittaker's property, or that day you were making dinner and you weren't really aware of what he was doing? What did you see and know specifically?
I saw him, we were together, and then I actually saw him zip out. I don't know if he crossed the border. I don't know if I saw that exactly, him crossing over.
I'm trying to figure out as a parent that once you change and you go in to go cook dinner, how much of an eye are you really keeping on him at that time?
Well, honestly, I feel that, especially the way we've parented with my ex-wife, is that he's relatively independent and he's a good kid. So I didn't feel like I had to police him every minute to make sure.
We're not talking about police.
Yeah.
We're talking about thinking about whether or not he was safe and seeing as though you were. How long had you lived there before this happened?
Probably 9 months, almost 10 months.
So about 9-10 months. So
Correct.
it had been enough time where you felt like he understood the lay of the land.
That is correct.
How many times had you seen Mr. Whittaker on his property after you met him?
Maybe twice.
So you didn't see him a lot?
No.
And so
absolutely not.
when your son was outside, you didn't have any reason for alarm?
No.
Are there other neighbors on the other side?
There are neighbors on the other side. There's plenty of houses there. There's kids in that neighborhood as well.
All right, so take me to the moment you knew your son was hurt. How did that happen?
Well, he actually came back after, cooking dinner that night, and he came in, and he was obviously in pain. He was crying, which, as you know, a 12-year-old doesn't often cry. He actually was, you could see, there was a whole bruise on the under part of his arm. So, and I asked him what happened. He said he was on the structure, on the property, Mr. Whittaker's property, and just exploring, being a kid. And he had fallen through the roof.
Did you tell him you can't go on other people's property? Because that's trespassing?
Well, yes, I had told him that, yes.
You had
Your
told
Honor.
him that before?
That is correct.
Then he decided to go on over there and go over there anyway?
That is correct.
After you told him don't? But you also testified that you had seen him previously wander on there, but he just came on back over.
Right. It was a short period where he just sort of crossed into it.
He crossed into it, and then you felt like he realized, I'm not on our property anymore, let me come back over.
Yes.
So in your mind, you didn't have any reason to think he was going to go over there and do enough to get hurt?
No.
So, Mr. Whittaker, how did you find out? You weren't there when this happened, correct?
No.
How were you notified that Mr. Larson's son was injured?
I took another one of my visits, and he came over to me and told me what happened with this bill in his hand that I should be paying. And I'm like, I didn't let him on there. I've got a 12-year-old grandson, and he knows not to trespass. And he especially knows you don't become a monkey and go on a roof in a structure,
He went on the roof of the structure?
Yeah.
He was on the partial roof. Well, if you can literally call it a structure, it's sort of falling down. But he was on partial as sort of climbing up when he fell. Yes.
All right, so he was climbing up the side of one of the structures. What was he trying to do?
As kids do, probably just.
No, what did he say he was trying to? Did you ask him what were you doing up there?
I did. I said.
And so what was his answer?
He said he got a better view of the neighborhood when he's on top of.
So he wanted to look out.
Yes, correct.
So he comes back, his hand's all messed up, or his wrist.
His arm. Actually.
So do you have to take him to emergency?
Yes, I did.
All right. What happened to the arm?
Well, it turns out it was broken. There was actually a big fracture right in the middle. Essentially, the femur.
Do you have evidence of that?
Yes, absolutely.
Let me see it, please.
I'll take your whole folder here.
Thank you.
I'll take your whole folder.
There we go.
Thank you.
Thank you. You sent me a photo of this. Well, it's more than a shack. This is the structure.
That is the structure.
But it's like a little cabin. And here's the bill to the emergency room, $250 for your visit, your x-rays $300, and get the cast on $700, so $1,000, which is what you're suing the defendant for.
That's correct.
So what is your defense, Mr. Whittaker? I mean, I get what you're saying. You said that clearly, that the child was trespassing. Have you ever heard of an attractive nuisance and what that is?
It's a fairly new term to me, but I know kids are attracted to things.
It won't be when this case is over, because you're going to understand what that means, right? And many homeowners don't know what that means, right? You assume you post no trespassing signs, you post your signs up, no trespassing, this is private property, don't come on here, and you think everything's fine, correct? However, then you have someone move in that has a 12-year-old child that may not fully understand those dangers, correct? And then that little shack, which I call a little cabin, potentially becomes an attractive nuisance, meaning it's something that as a landowner you should know or have reason to know that might attract a 12-year-old boy to come over and explore in it. Not necessarily on it, but in it and whatever else they may have in their minds.
Coming up.
And if I might say, I asked him a number of times, I said, both times I think I saw him, I said, if you don't want anybody on your property, put up a fence. I mean, you know, they used to say, you know, fences make great neighbors. And I told him, I said, that's the best way to keep people out is.
See, this is when people need to stop testifying.
Next time on We the People with Judge Lauren Lake.
So in your mind, you didn't have any reason to think he was going to go over there and do enough to get hurt?
No.
So, Mr. Whittaker, how did you find out? You weren't there when this happened, correct?
No.
How were you notified that Mr. Larson's son was injured?
I took another one of my visits, and he came over to me and told me what happened with this bill in his hand that I should be paying.
Next time on We the People with Judge Lauren Lake.
And so I'd much rather have him outside exploring than inside playing video games on his phone.
Don't we all?
And he's a good kid, so I didn't feel like I had to police him every minute to make sure.
We're not talking about police.
You're watching Emmy-nominated We the People with Judge Lauren Lake. We're back with the case of Mitchell Larson, who blames Larry Whittaker for his son's broken arm.
Now, the issue that I'm having with this case is that you were clear about the fact that you didn't live there when you met Mr. Larson. You also said that you had your signs up. Did you bring any pictures to court of the signs that you had posted around your property? May I see that, please?
Thank you.
And so ultimately, this court has to decide, did you owe a duty of care? Did you breach that duty of care? Yeah, private property, no trespassing. Would your son, Mr. Larson, have had to pass this these two signs to get near that particular structure on the property?
Not necessarily. That picture is a very small section of it. I mean, got quite
so
large.
there are sections you can get into that don't even have these signs.
That's correct. And I told him too. I said before, if it...
Is that true, Mr. Whittaker? There are sections where you don't have signs.
Well, it's a big wooded area, so there's, you can't
I
put
didn't
signs.
ask you that. I said, are there sections where you don't have signs?
Yes.
Okay, then that's the answer to the question. Sometimes it's just a simple yes or no. So upon meeting Mr. Larson, you guys had a conversation. You knew your properties were there right next to one another with no delineation, no fencing, right? I think at this point, I'm looking at two men that owed a child a greater duty of care.
And if I might say, I asked him a number of times, I said, both times I think I saw him, I said, if you don't want anybody on your property, put up a fence. I mean, they used to say, fences make great neighbors. And I told him, I said, that's the best way to keep people out is...
See, this is when people need to stop testifying.
Coming up.
Because you know what you just told me? Is you were thinking about fencing and how that could be safer so your child wouldn't go onto his property. Which then leads this court to ask the question, why didn't you get a fence?
You're watching Emmy-nominated We the People with Judge Lauren Lake. We're back with the case of Mitchell Larson, who blames Larry Whittaker for his son's broken arm.
Because you know what you just told me? Is you were thinking about fencing and how that could be safer so your child wouldn't go onto his property. Which then leads this court to ask the question, why didn't you get a fence?
I drove there one time, and he was on the property. And
you drove there where?
Before that.
And who was on the property?
And his son was on the property.
Now you just told on yourself. Okay, well this is great. So if you drove there and the son was on the property at one point, and you knew that,
yeah,
why didn't you take measures, stronger measures to say, you know what, I got a 12-year-old, I have a whole bunch of abandoned structures. This looks like a playground to 12-year-old curiosity. I better protect myself and get some fencing or something up that can block this child for just coming over there. Did you have an additional conversation with Mr. Larson when you saw the child? Did you ring his doorbell and say, hey, I just saw your child on my property. There's too much over there that could hurt him. I have signs up. Please do not let him on my property.
I did go to him.
So you went to him that day and you said that?
Yes.
And so when he said that, what was your response?
Well, I don't really remember it that way, that he came over and said anything specifically that day. He did maybe come over on a later date and said that he has seen my son over there, but I don't believe it was the day of the incident.
All right. This court has heard enough.
Judge Lake's verdict when We the People returns. Promotional consideration provided by... You're watching Emmy-nominated We the People with Judge Lauren Lake.
I do think that there has been clear testimony that you were aware that there was a risk, since you said no trespassing, that you were aware that the child was present on your property. I do believe that you were also aware of your son's curiosity about that property. You had seen him go over and come back, correct?
Correct.
And you also had the opportunity to say, hey, this may be a problem. Maybe I need to get some fencing. For that reason, Mr. Whittaker, this court is going to hold you responsible for his son's injuries, but also a portion of that liability will go to you. Judgment for the plaintiff for $750. Court is adjourned.
All rise.
Judge Lake has ruled in favor of the plaintiff. The defendant is ordered to pay $750.
I really believe that he should have put up some more protective care for a 12-year-old kid.
Well, it's one thing for a kid to walk onto a property, but to climb onto a roof is a little sign of bad parenting, as far as I'm concerned.
This has been a production of Allen Media Group.